Welcome to episode 88 of Genn and Millie, which is actually episode number 1 in my head because it's a new adventure. But it's episode 88 of Genn and Millie, where a Gen Xer and a millennial share the strength-based perspective through which they view the world. We are your hosts, Allison and Tess, and we are in a car headed to the airport, literally. Tess had her last day Tuesday?
Yesterday.
What's today? Wednesday?
Today's Wednesday, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so good. I'm so good with week math right now. I'm so good with days of the week. I'm proud of me too. So we are headed, I picked up Tess in Sydney, Nebraska, and we are headed to the Denver airport, and we are truly celebrating an end and a beginning, the both and, of, for me, sad that you are leaving, but excited for your adventure. Sad that Genn and Millie of before has come to an end, but the new Genn and Millie is going to continue. There's like so many levels of the both and, but the fact that we're recording this in the car, windshield time, is such a tribute to our beginning. Yeah. It also is a tribute to there was a video that was taken of our live episode at conference, and that to me was full circle because we started with video. Yep. We are now full circle again because we are doing what we do best, which is having really meaningful conversations in windshield time.
And I love it too because you'll probably hear that a little bit in the background. You'll realize we're in a car, which hopefully feels like you're just riding along in the car with us because I'm not good at sound editing the best quite yet. So you're going to hear the sound. You're going to hear the car in the background.
You were going to have microphones and have us all hooked up. No. I was like, do I have a headset?
Nope. I'm like, is this good enough to record on a voice notes on my phone?
We're doing it. So we had such a great experience doing our final, quote unquote, episode at conference. We had a great audience. We had great questions from the audience. I first want to ask you, is that what you expected when I said, hey, I'm not going to give you a heads up? Is that what you expected?
I think what was hard is, and I listened back, and this was like the first episode I listened back from start to finish ever, right?
Again, number 1, Genn and Millie.
Yeah, here we go. Genn and Millie first, full circle. I actually listened to a full episode. And I think, like, in some ways, yes, it's what I expected. But I could tell, like, I wanted to have, my context likes to give full answers. And I wanted to give those full answers, but I also knew that there were lots of questions and we were short on time. Right. Like, we were literally going to be cut off at 45 minutes. And I think as someone who is always aware of time, who is worried about time, who is a time-based linear person, I think I could tell it was stressful for me. So I could feel that I was rushing through some of my responses, and which is also why I don't listen back, because I'm overly critical of myself. And I could see and I could hear my verbal pause is right, with a question mark, and the amount of times that I said it, I was like, my God.
Welcome to what I have known for a long time, and now you're owning it. Mine is
mine is right. And so it's like teaching, like a check for understanding, like it's the teacher in me, right?
It is.
It's the Professor Tess in me, I guess. And so I think I just, when I was listening to it, I think that was the hard part, was to like, know that there were more questions, and there were questions that kept coming in, but I knew that we needed to wrap up, and I knew I wanted to conclude. I think it's always important. I love making sure that we have action items at the end of every episode, and so I wanted us to list some action items. And so there were a few things that I knew probably about halfway through the episode. I could tell, and I could remember when I was feeling rushed.
And I think, so I'm going to ask you this.
Yeah.
And then I have a second piece to this. But what strengths do you think that was either honoring or bumping?
The time frame? Do you mean?
What you just described.
That I listened back?
The way you knew linear time, felt rushed, didn't get to all the questions.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't want to call it anxiousness, but there's...
Yeah, it was. I was very anxious because I wanted to get as many questions as we could, but I didn't want to just simply answer the questions, right? Like, I wanted to give more information, right? So that's context, input, learner, intellection, right? Like those are a lot of my thinking themes that are up there. My individualization wants to honor everybody's questions and make sure everyone has the chance to feel heard in their questions. My adaptability is what's hyper aware of time frame.
Yes.
So it's a little bit of everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for me, what I really wanted to come of that was, one, for you to feel honored and seen and have people know that they could gift their strengths to you by sharing some things. But I really wanted to honor our audience.
Yeah.
That was so important to me, and I think that's a woo communication for me, that I knew that the people in that room
are some of lifetime listeners.
Yes.
Like I mean, like
Yes.
I can picture where everyone was sitting in that room.
Yes, and some were in there the second the doors opened.
Yeah.
Front row seat, and
Like we hadn't even pulled that pub table in there yet, and they were in there.
I don't think we can't because we're not live with them.
No.
The fact that they were willing, and I knew there would be that desire for audience participation.
Yeah.
So I think my connectedness with communication, with strategic thought, how do I honor both and? How do I honor Tess and this audience that I know means so much to you, but also I wanted them to feel like they were contributing to to your departure. They were contributing their own
I love that.
well wishes, but also like, here are my strengths that you can lean in on. Here are pieces of advice, and I will still encourage that. I think this next episode would be a great action item, is what advice do you have for Tess as she moves to a brand new city and space, and it leads really well to the question that we had come up that we didn't get the chance to get to in our live session.
Yep. And so this was a question that came from someone that was tuning in virtually, and I just recommend that if anyone was there live or virtually, or just anyone that wasn't at conference and didn't participate in the live session, but maybe you caught it or are listening to this episode now, if you have any questions for us, we love that. We love to get participation from people that are listening. We know people are listening, and so feel free to send that to us. I'll make sure I give my personal email at the end, and I'll make sure that my personal email is attached to the show notes for this episode, because normally I have my teammates' email attached. But feel free to send us questions. We love to answer questions. You with your high input, me with my high learner. We love to answer questions.
I wonder how many times I'm going to send an email to your teammates.
Well, sorry, Tori, in advance if she's listening, because she's getting them all now. So, yeah.
I just thought of that. There's just going to be a ton of times where I'll be, or
Tori's going to be like, once again,
or I try to Teams message you, or I try to call you.
Bounces back.
I wonder how many times I'm going to do that.
Yeah, sounds about right. But yeah, no, you'll be fine. I think it'll be good. But
it is going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard. I mentioned to Tess earlier in the green room, which is the car, that Gallup has a question on their Q12 engagement measurement about I have a best friend at work. And we always get a lot of questions about that question. People are like, what does that mean? And what does that really measure? And this is the second time in my career where I've truly felt the awareness of losing my best friend at work. First with Gigi's departure, and now with yours. Both situations where I'm happy for you, where it ended gracefully and well, and you contributed these massive amounts of things and ripple effects to the organization. But I'm starting to understand why Gallup asked that question, because this is going to be, for me, a sense of grief. And not just because, like, this is my friend at work who I do a podcast with, and also who strength spots me all the time, but it's also the broader what we have built. And how do I carry that now forward, honoring the legacy that you have left? Some of those things are not within my control. Some of them I will fight to the death for. But it's helping me understand, and I don't think that's why Gallup necessarily asked that question, but it's helped me think about, like, my own, like, my coaching clients. Like, why, maybe I should be asking that question to them. Do you have a best friend at work? Have you lost a best friend at work? What does it feel like during COVID? What does it feel like, work from home? when those dynamics shift and change. So one of the questions that came up the day that I was sitting in line with 5 remarkable human beings in line for Bogey's Bogey's record store to open, one of the questions we asked is, what happens when a band member leaves the band? Is it really the same band anymore? And there was so much debate about it because, I opened my mouth about, there's one Van Halen, and I will arm wrestle anybody who wants to tell me otherwise, but there is one Van Halen, and that's David Lee Roth. So Sammy Hagar Van Halen is, not the same.
Yeah.
It's Van Hagar. And so I think now I'm losing a band member. How does the band continue on? Or does it? Or is it a different band? Like when we talked about this with the podcast, I was like, do we want to change the name? Do we need to change, what do we need to do that keeps it the legacy that we've created? Because we want to continue.
Yeah.
But what do we need to do differently to start anew? So I feel like we're starting a new band.
We are a little bit. But we have the same band members.
We do.
In some ways. In this context, it's the exact same band members. Like my relator can't. We're not. There's no new friends around here.
But I'm still in the old band.
I'm sorry.
So I got to figure out how to be, how to go on with the old band without you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
So
it's hard. It's hard to be a departing band member too.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. For a band that you've loved and you've given so much to and you've invested in so much, it's hard. It's like leaving a family, right?
Yeah.
You've toured together. You've gone through ups and downs together. You've had successes together. You've had not so successful ventures together, right? All of it, right? As you call learning opportunities, I was like, in the music industry, I think you can call them failures. You can call them failures.
The record
did not sell.
Right.
We've gone through it all together. So it's hard to also be a departing band member. Striking out solo, John Lennon's independent albums were not quite the same as when he was with the Beatles. Some good music, but nobody quite, Paul McCartney and the Wigs, I don't know about that. Yeah, oof. Yeah, see, nobody quite struck out independently
I feel
after.
like I'm what's her name when they give the track just to the sound of her voice. What was Paul McCartney's wife's name?
Yoko Ono.
No, Paul
McCartney, Linda.
Have you ever heard the Pared Down when she sings along with me? Yeah. I mean, it's so bad, and that's who I feel like right now.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the new Genn and Millie. Let's go back to the question, and that question came from Elaine.
That question came from Elaine in Bellevue, and we love Elaine. She said we're the only podcast we listen to, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Maybe you should expand your horizons, Elaine.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, Elaine. There's probably better sound quality somewhere else.
Especially on this one.
Yeah, especially on this one. So, my teammate's email access was cut off, so I don't remember exactly the verbatim question, but of course Tori sent it to us. But it was something to the extent of, have these conversations from this podcast and the conversations we get to have all the time together as teammates and band members and friends. How have these conversations at all, and how have they impacted the decisions that you are making? Your move to Colorado, Allie, my decision to get my PhD, to leave teammates, to move across the country. How have these conversations impacted that?
Who's going first?
You, of course.
Because you need time to think.
I need time to think.
You got a week.
I know. I had all week with this question.
So for sure, yes. Yeah. For sure, yes. And I think I kind of spoke to this to some degree, but it wasn't the same question. When I was asked the question from the wonderful lady from Hastings in the front row, I can't think of her name, when she asked what my favorite episode was, when you have helped me name the hard things, I have grown as a result. So I have a tendency to, when I feel inadequate, incompetent, foolish, stupid, embarrassed, and I wrote about this recently. I'm very similar to my friend Kim's son Paxton, who's 4 years old. The only time Pax cries is when he's embarrassed, and I'm very similar to that. And when I feel foolish or stupid or not competent, and when you help me to name learning opportunities or name those moments of I feel less than, it has helped me grow, because what has happened is there's this space of, it's not I was thinking about how to say this. It's not like, come on, Allison, pick yourself up. It's more, are you going to be who you say you are? It's a hold to the voice. It's a hold to the practice. It's a hold to the, if you're going to teach this, preach this, say this, repeat it back, and you listen to this podcast, Allison, if you're going to say this to others, then you have to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And as a result, I have felt empowered to do more of that. So not just in the listening back, which I always did. And sometimes I would be going for long walks, listening back, thinking, do you hear yourself, Allison? And do you hear how Tess is so gently trying to
not so gently sometimes.
Sometimes not so gently. And vice versa.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
How she's trying to hold you to what you're saying.
Yeah. It's accountability.
And so it's empowered me to do more of that. Today, the word pull was kind of the word that came to me. And when asked, what's a word that describes where I'm at right now, I'm feeling a pull. I felt a very strong pull to stand in integrity, to say, okay, this is what I practice, or what I preach that I practice. I got to start walking it. Yeah. So I would say, yes, it for sure contributed to that. It also contributed to my confidence. And I had to be really confident in myself to make this giant decision to move.
Absolutely.
So it's a resounding yes for me. Did these conversations influence my decision making? Small and large, yes, for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. You said one of my favorite words, empowerment. It's part of my personal mission statement. So I love that. I love that these conversations have led to that for you. I mean, it's a resounding yes for me too, if we didn't know that already. I mean, I think, long time ago, one of the first times we ever talked about the concept of purpose, I remember sharing about a message that my pastor, Micah Eldridge, preached on. And he preached on basically what we now have come to know as Ikigai. But except sans the circle, that's like what you can get paid for. But basically it was like, what are you good at? What are you naturally drawn to, and what does the world need, right? And it's like the fusion of those three is like what he terms your calling, right? In a church context, that's the word he uses, right? Or your purpose, right?
Right.
And he talks about the fact that like your purpose, it doesn't have to have it doesn't change in your context. It doesn't change based on your career. Like, of course, there's all this alliteration because he's a great polemic, right? So there's like all of this, it's very eloquently done, which I'm not explaining well, but it was basically like it all these like C words that it's not contingent on that. Your calling is your calling, no matter your context, no matter your career, no matter all of these things. Like it's this thread throughout your whole life. These same themes show up, right? And I think that these conversations have shown me more of the connectedness of that thread throughout my life, right? Your connectedness, my connectedness, these conversations, from the start of my journey with teammates to where we are today to where I'm going, right? I see the thread of loving to learn and to teach and to grow and to ask hard questions and to seek the difficult answers. And that's all I wrote about I had to write literal purpose statements for my PhD applications. And that's what I wrote about in them is I am not contented with simple answers or simple questions. Right? Like, it's all about what are the hard things, and what are the hard things in life that we go through, and how do we make sense of those things? And that's always been what has fascinated me, and this has been yet another microcosm of that thread of purpose in my life. And it's just helped illuminate the fact that that's what it is for me. That's my calling and that's my purpose. And so it's helped almost like, I feel like the thread, there were these segments of it, but it's like a joining of them, and now it's like a light, right? Like the thread is bright now, right? I see it. I see the way it's shown up in my past, and I see the way that it's in my present and the way it's moving towards my future now, especially on a day like today.
And it's so, to me, the other aspect of that is the audience.
Absolutely.
So when that question came from Elaine about, has this prompted or has this led to or influenced your decisions? It's not just you and me.
No,
like
absolutely
the fact that
not.
Anybody listens to this is still an absolute wonder to me. But what we hear back is hey, I took that question and I asked it of, my coworker or my partner or my kids or, somebody in the checkout line, or this is how I reflected back on that episode.
Yeah.
So I think what we saw is not only the ways that we were holding that sort of very sacred space for difficult conversations, for meaningful conversations, for in-depth conversations, but we were seeing how they were far-reaching.
Yeah.
And when someone says to me, I feel like I'm just talking with the two of you, what I heard was not, I'm listening to you two talk.
Yeah.
I'm participating.
Yeah.
And that's, I know for me, and I believe this for you, that is just part of my purpose and part of my why. I want to, the only thing that I could ever wish for to accomplish in my life is that I help people to feel more seen and heard.
Yeah.
And if that means that they're sitting and listening to this and feel like they're riding along with us in the back seat, I mean, why would I do anything else?
Yeah.
That's just who I am. But it also has helped me to think about my impact and to think about the power of my voice.
Yeah.
Where was I when I had this conversation where someone told me that my voice sounded like now I don't have to filter anything anymore. We can do this any way we want to. They said, where was I? This happened recently. And they said, oh, you have this like sultry, sexy actress voice.
Oh.
And I said, what?
Huh?
They said, oh yeah, it's like deep and like I could listen to you all day. And I said, oh wow. Like I had never really even thought about that.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about that and how I've always hated how deep my voice is. Like I always wanted it sounded too masculine to me. And now I'm like, you know what? So just even I'm so sound sensitive. Even the frequency, the tone, the energy of my voice, I'm starting to own.
Yes.
And I think that this space between you and I, we just like pushed one another to own our voices and the power of our voices and the influence of our voices, but also to think about the voices that are not heard and how can we lift them and how can we empower and encourage. And I'm really proud of the 87 episodes before. Not all of them were moments of shining examples of positivity. But when I answered the question, my favorite episode was one of the hardest.
Yeah.
It was in using my voice to name, this is where I am right now.
Yeah.
And it was like you were sitting there across from me like, okay, we're going. Like, you're going to do it.
This is the day. This is the day. And I remember that episode.
And it was so
very clearly
hard.
Yeah.
It was so
you
hard.
You can say it,
Oh, I know, but I feel like I'm going to have to edit myself anyway. It was really hard.
Yeah.
And I wanted to... I wanted to hide from it.
Yeah,
and you let me for so long, and then you were like, okay, Allison, I'm right here.
Yeah.
And our audience is right here.
Yeah.
And you can use your voice to say something that's difficult to say.
And I'm glad that every single one of the 87 episodes prior to this is not a shining example of positivity. Because what it is it's a shining representative of authenticity.
Yep.
And that's what I love about this space. And that came out in our live episode when we talked. I mean, that was all that we talked about is our greatest joys, yes, are giving voice to people who need voice, allowing people to participate in these conversations with us. But more than that, I'm like, I feel like we're just practicing trying to live life as authentically as we can. And this space, I think, has been a space of empowerment to allow us to do that. Because you're right, we've kept each other accountable to the times where we feel like we aren't. Each other is not doing that, right? Which we don't always know, right? Sometimes I don't even know when I'm not living as authentically as I ought to. But you see that in me too, right? Like, And I see that in you, right?
I loved the episode when you absolutely owned your theme bias towards consistency.
Yeah, and that's the one I named. I was like, I did not even realize that I had that. And that's the point of some of these conversations.
Absolutely.
Some things I don't even know.
Right. It's the question being asked, and it's creating the conversation that can feel safe but also be hard. You know, when Denise in the audience said, you know, do you feel like this represents your younger self? I have not thought about me singing with
the bonnet.
With the
I'm still waiting
bonnet.
For pictures.
Well, I guess there is legit a video, but you're singing your grand old flag, holding the microphone, just belting it out. How completely in my element I was, and then here I was holding the microphone, explaining that, thinking it's almost like an infinity circle of me returning to my younger self, and when I do, I feel so authentic. And my move to Colorado has, for me, been a return to that younger me. I believe, I mean, we don't know this yet, but I don't know where futuristic is for me. I think it's pretty high. You're going to Howard is going to be a return to your younger self in so many ways.
Oh yeah.
In that authentic self. Like, I see you, like, backpack on, you know, just heading to the library. And, I mean, I just see this. I have this picture in my mind of you in absolute contentment because you are in alignment with your authentic self, which often we see is really represented in our younger self. But also in your strengths.
Absolutely.
Like, you'll be walking in, living in, breathing in your strengths.
And that was like when you talk about the full infinity, right? I was going to call it like an 8, you know, something like that. The full infinity cycle of your strengths of singing your grand old flag with your bonnet and now holding a microphone explaining that. That was full circle when someone asked, when that same question, when Denise was asking about that, and I shared about my Aunt Lynn.
Yes.
And I was thinking about how she's coming to visit me in October.
Did you listen to, okay, so you listened back.
I listened back.
All right. Do you hear the pure, sheer joy in your voice when you are talking about the revolution?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, so I will really encourage you to watch the video because the video is fantastic, but you can see me just watching you and thinking, it's like she's talking about a concert, but she's actually
talking about the American Revolution.
And I mean, you could tell that it's almost reining you in to keep this story short. I was like, she wants to talk about this so badly.
I do. I want to reenact our reenactment of the Boston Tea Party in that moment in that conference room.
So it's really, and I would encourage our listeners, I am going to share the video. I told Tess, I have not been able to find my words yet to describe, to say, it's not goodbye, but to say thank you. I haven't been able to find my words yet, but I'm working on it. And when I do, I'm going to share the video from our last podcast. It is really lovely. Digital Moxie, they were amazing, but I felt like they were hearing and seeing us. They were in it. They were laughing. They were enjoying it. But you can see so much in the nonverbal between the two of us, the way that we actually yin-yang know where the other one's going.
You called me out on it once, too. You were like, they can all see you. I'm like, I know, but this is part of the beauty of a live episode is they can see when I'm telling you very blatantly, you get to answer first.
So you did the pointy finger at me.
I know.
When we went up to the podium to announce, to celebrate the 201 grads. And first Tess pointed, here's where you need to go, Allison. And I went to my place and I stood in my spot.
You wanted specific directions.
And then she could feel me. She could feel me from her peripheral vision. She could feel me moving towards the podium as if I was going to step in. And she did this thing with her hand like, please pause, Allison. It's not yet. And it's like, you even know my nonverbals that I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like you just were watching the whole time. And then we had this lovely surprise to see the video of us featured at conference during awards of, celebrating Genn and Millie, which I thought was lovely. Again, I just can't believe that anybody listens to it. But there were a lot of people smiling in the audience. That's the one thing that I love about being behind the microphone is you get to see the reactions.
Yeah.
And I loved seeing the reactions while trying to hold mine in.
Yeah, definitely. So, great question, Elaine. It's a resounding yes.
As usual, Elaine.
Yes, as usual. A great question.
It was a great
question. But also a good question for other people. Like, I'm curious to know, how have any of our action items or any of our conversations or episodes impacted something in your life? Like, how have these conversations impacted you? Has it made you think about something differently? Think about the world differently? Think about yourselves differently? Hopefully it's a yes, but I'd love to hear an example of that, right? It helps us be encouraged too, because, as Allie mentioned, it's not just about these conversations as beneficial and as life-giving as they are for us. It's also about how they impact the people that listen too.
I hope that people who are listening who have taken the drive from Sydney to DIA recognize exactly where I am based on the sound of the road.
Yes.
I mean, come on, Colorado. You got a lot of tax money for a lot of things that are happening out here. You would think that you would improve upon your roads. And this drive always amazes me that way. I'm like, is this the loudest possible trek of road?
Right.
It's also the worst cell service. So my kids know when I've reached this point because Mom
drops off.
Out of service, yes.
Okay.
I think that this is a great start to a new adventure.
Yes.
We would love to hear also your feedback on, we're making some shifty changes. Shifty changes, or shifts.
Shifts.
I didn't mean
changes.
shifty.
Because it was like, we're not making shifty changes.
We are making shifts and changes.
There you go. Okay.
And those changes will include a new we're keeping the name, but a new sort of graphic and image. We're going to change music, which I'm still working on.
Okay. Come on now.
I asked Sean if he would just learn just a few Bob Seger chords. So we may be without intro music until it's go time. But I really am grateful that our listeners will continue with us. I think they may notice a little more brash.
Maybe.
Brash?
Yeah. More unfiltered, maybe?
More unfiltered, although I don't know that I've been very...
I was going to say I'm pretty unfiltered in life in general. Word of the year, integrity.
So I think that they will probably note some changes, but also see some consistent... Still us.
Yeah.
It's still us.
Absolutely. Okay, so before we adieu on this episode, we're doing fine on time. I do have one final gift for you.
What are you doing?
That I'll open because you're driving.
Thank you. Safety first.
Safety first.
Anyone who's listening, I have both hands on the wheel.
And a cup of coffee in one hand. So I'm going to open this for you.
You are the best at this.
Yes. So this one is the public gift for our episode.
It's the cat towel.
It's the cat towel.
Oh my gosh.
So,
it's the cat towel.
yes.
You all, I don't know how to describe this, but there is a feeling of wraparound that I have right now. It used to be the way that we carried our computer monitors. It was also our sound booth. And now
it's yours.
Oh my goodness.
And you can't throw it away. Sorry.
Thank you for making sure that you say that on this episode.
There's now public accountability.
You know what? I do have a fantastic hot tub and pool, and I think it would be awesome if I showed up with a cat towel.
We're the cat towel wrapped around you. Oh, that would be scarring.
Yeah,
your poor neighbors.
It would be for a lot. That is beautiful and perfect. I didn't even think you still had it.
Of course I did.
That is a lovely, I don't want to call it a departure, but a lovely until next time.
Until next time gift. Absolutely.
Thank you, Tess. Thank you.
Of course. So tell me action items.
I think asking people, as you mentioned, to think about the ways that they have, considered for themselves what kinds of conversations we had that maybe influenced any decisions that they made, or maybe even conversations that they had as a result of these conversations that led to bigger, broader decisions.
Absolutely.
I would love to know if anything that our listeners would love to hear us talk about, because now it's pretty wide open.
Yeah.
Or changes they would suggest that we make.
Yeah.
Just besides the brand and the music.
Absolutely. And then I just add any questions that came to mind for you as we gave an opening for questions during our live episode, last episode, and had a continuation of one of those questions this episode. Any questions that you want to ask of us for
this road is bullshit.
Episode.
I can say that now. This road is bullshit.
It is a bullshit road. That's all right. They're literally in the car with us. We did give that at the very beginning, like just as a little bit of a warning at the beginning of the episode. You're literally in the car with us, so we cannot control the sound here. So anyway, I hope people journey along with us still regardless. But anyway, so I love that. Any of these conversations that impacted you, any questions that you have for us, like an open Q&A, any sort of questions, and then any content suggestions for the future. So I love it. All the above. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into episode 88 of Genn and Millie. If you enjoyed today's conversation, consider sharing this episode with a friend. To respond to any of the action items or questions that we posed in this episode, feel free to follow us on Instagram. That might be the easiest way to reach us, at Genn and Millie, at GENNANDMILLIE. I'll also just put my personal email in here too, as well as in the show notes, because I'm the email of contact on our show. So it's just my first name, TESS.Starman, my last name, STARMAN, at gmail.com. So thank you everybody for tuning in to episode 88/1. I don't know how we're going to name these. Week 88/week 1.
Hey, do you know what?
What?
8. That's infinity.
Gal, your connectedness is on fire today.
Oh, I just thought of that.
Yeah, it is 88. Look at us, both in our infinity circles. Wow, the serendipity of it. Beautiful, which it's actually 89th episode, right? Because our double part 1, part 2 episode.
Tess.
I know. But technically speaking, it's 88. Sorry, didn't mean to ruin it. It is numbered 88, yes.
You're shattering my
Sorry,
moment.
That had to. Anyway, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and until next time.